All right, so our first, we don't know these questions. In what ways does the internet allow us to be more and less of ourselves?
Okay, so I think it's divided on different social platforms. So Instagram is your visual branding of yourself. It is definitely a fake you. Facebook is like the family reunion version of yourself. Like, you're friendly and quirky, but like not too dangerous. And then where you're anonymous is where you're your real or worst self, like Tumblr or 4chan or Reddit.
Yeah, I think that's really important to look at how the different, instead of just saying, oh, the internet is or the internet isn't yourself, is a little, it's kind of a silly answer. We should look at how all the different networks are designed and how that's different. And so I'm a sociologist. We talk about affordances. That is, what does a network allow you to do or prohibit you from doing, encourage or discourage? But I don't know, I do think in the question of like, does it allow you to be more or less of ourselves? That makes it kind of sound like there is a real me, and then I'm either more or less that real me. And I think when you're performing, even when you're performing for likes or you're being sort of, self-branded, being a celebrity on Instagram, that performance is also the real you. And just as being anonymous on Tumblr is the real you, just as being the professional you on LinkedIn, as sociologists, we always talk about social context. You have your context of your family, you have context of work, you have context when you're on stage at a bookstore, and you perform differently for all these different contexts. And there isn't just sort of one real you. There's a you for every person that you're around. There's a you for every interface that you look at on your screen. So I'm not sure if it's hard for me to say what's more or less ourselves.
Well, I think just because you can see it now on the internet makes it seem like it's something new, but it's just evidence of behavior that already existed before. Like, you don't act the same at school as you do when you're partying with your friends. Like, you present different selves all the time. That's totally normal.
Yeah. I really want a word for how sometimes the internet or social media makes a thing that before was really weird and not obvious, but it makes it really, really obvious. So the fact that you perform yourself, in sociology, we often teach Irving Goffman. He has a presentation of self in everyday life, and it's all about performance. Like, we're actors on stage with our props and our costumes and all of that and our scripts. And that I've heard that was really hard to teach a generation ago. And when I taught it, I was like, well, yeah, obviously I'm selecting myself from drop-down menus. I'm literally uploading myself. Of course I'm performing myself. Or status. Now we have this, like, your Twitter, or your clout, or your Instagram followers. We put numbers on everything. People are like, oh, now everything's a status hierarchy. It's like, oh my God, everything was a status hierarchy before. We just didn't have numbers.
Right.
Things are like more obvious, maybe.
Yeah, I think that's true. Should we go to another question?
Yeah.
Has social media made us all better at self-censorship? Are we becoming better PR companies for ourselves?
A double-barreled question. Are we becoming better at self-censorship? Yes. It doesn't mean that we are self-censoring more. We have all these opportunities to not self-censor. But I think the idea of self-branding, boy, it's a nice segue. That's another thing that we always have done. Right now, everybody is sitting the way you want to sit, the way other people see you, and you're wearing the right things and all of that. We are always self-branded, but now I can say self-branding, and nobody in here gets to pretend like they're not a part of that. I think that maybe that's new. It's more obvious that we're more literate, or I don't know.
Yeah, in like old teen movies, there's a common trope of the nerdy girl who changes schools and decides to become popular. That's in Mean Girls, but it's in lots of old movies. And we just do a version of that on the internet. We don't have to change schools to change who we are. We can show off to our exes that we're like having a fabulous life. Or, I mean, my mom likes me to be on Facebook because it makes the in-laws jealous. That, I just think it shows old instincts. It hasn't created new ones.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we are we're consciously aware all the time that we can take a photo of what we're doing and we can post that and it'll get more likes or less likes, a part of this, this kind of game that social media asks us to play, or at least the social media that has metrics. Getting back to the earlier, not all the sites have, though. Not everything has that. And so, yeah, I think we do have, that's like part of our conscious awareness. Like, that's part of just when you look at your food, you're like, oh my God, I could take a picture of that right now and we'll get a bunch of likes. That's a new thing. I think it's a little bit more maybe omnipresent or a little bit more like salient.
Yeah.
That's the word, yeah.
But on the other hand, like the greatest feeling in the world, for me at least, is if you're at a party and you tell a joke and everyone laughs. And now you can have that all the time. Like, you could just like do the tweet that goes viral. It feels like so awesome. I mean, I know there's lots of like horrible things about the internet and it's full of monsters, but that like sensation is like available all the time.
So everybody should do viral tweets.
That's right, yeah, just make viral tweets.
Should I do another one? Yeah, all right. Okay, that's a long one. Do people use the internet differently across cultures? What are some of the small differences that may have surprising ramifications in 40 or 50 years' time? Seem like completely different questions. But
Okay, well, I'll start with the first part. I have a friend whose brother has a photo app, and they made it not anonymous because when you allow it to be anonymous, then you often have bullying, right? But they've gotten many, many requests from women in the third world or more repressed countries asking for private photos so that they can interact with their friends without covering themselves. So, I don't know. But I don't know how that'll change how we like act in the future. I think most predictions from 2 or 3 years ago have been proven wrong. So if we try to predict something now, we'll just look like fools in like 6 months.
yeah, I think predicting the future almost always makes you look bad. And of course, the internet is used differently across cultures. And there's significant amount of research happening in a lot of these areas, more than just like sort of marketing research, but like sociological or ethnographic research. There are very surprising ways that sites can be made differently. For instance, you can go to different parts of the globe and you might see as part of your profile your blood type. In the United States, blood type doesn't really say a whole lot. We don't often list our blood type here. In other parts of the world, it's a meaningful thing to share. An early social network, I believe it was in Japan. I loved it. This was like in MySpace era. It showed you who looked at all of your stuff. So someone was looking at your photo. You saw that they were looking at your photo. So this we think of this as reciprocal visibility. That is, you see me and I see you seeing me, which is very different than Facebook, Facebook stalking, which is kind of correctly named. It's that I see you and you don't see me seeing you. So that's more of like the metaphor would be somebody in a bush or something like that. Stalking is probably correct in that situation. And so it's interesting how some of those things are completely different across cultures and reminds us that the social media that we have isn't the social media we're going to have in the future. Like these things that we take for granted when we go, oh, everyone's performing for likes. Well, we don't know. Not every network has likes. Not every, it can be very different. Social media is really, really young. And I think that's what a lot of cross-cultural research foregrounds for me. Yeah.
Well, one of the things I noticed while reporting about Tumblr and other social networks that are really popular with teens is that what is most viral, what really like takes off on the web is just raw, pure feelings. It's more and more and more about expressing emotions and sometimes very subtly. Like maybe 6 years ago, it was like stylish to do a GIF that was like, and I was like, and it's like Tyra Banks, like, like making a face, and it was very like obvious and cartoonish, and it's gotten more and more and more subtle to where like there's just micro expressions on these people's faces. So you're a sociologist, like what do you think about that? Like how can it go like further towards just like pure raw emotion?
So words often stop at international barriers, right? Language barriers, whereas visual information can often communicate across language barriers. And there are some emotions that they read the way that we enact them with our faces. They read very similarly across cultures. In fact, that's what Facebook was trying to do with their various reactions, was distill all of emotion, or at least the emotion they wanted on their site, down to these universal symbols. And so you have that feeling win, that kind of, or the sort of reaction GIF that it's just sort of universally understood, which can go across language. Which I
Yeah,
think is
it's
really...
like augmenting language. It's like a richer language. Like people seem to think that sharing GIFs is stupid, but I think it's actually making us smarter. It's more complex.
Yeah, I mean, it's a form of literacy. I mean, literacy is just, I'm thinking a thing and I want to convey it, so I convey it in some way, in a way that you can then decode, right? And that's all literacy is. And we're now literate in all these new ways, which, like sharing a celebrity's face, making a reaction, so that I can express what I want to express, and then you decode correctly what I was trying to express. That's a new literacy. I think that's really, really, really interesting, that I can take a photo and send that to somebody and they understand what I'm feeling or what I'm trying to say.
Right. Yeah. Okay. When it comes to our identities on the web, what are people rightly and wrongly afraid of?
I mean, people would be whom is afraid of what. So the stakes of being on the internet are completely different for different people. There's social vulnerability in the world, and different people are afraid of different things. I think a lot of people are just afraid of neglect more than necessarily being like cyberbullied. I think for a lot of people, the biggest fear is that you post something on Facebook and it gets no likes, or an Instagram photo gets no likes. Usually that'll then get deleted. But for other people, the fear is very different. So one example, so it used to be in the past, and it is again now, but it used to be in the past, you can make your friends list and your likes private, or public. You had that choice. And one day Facebook decided, let's just make those public for everybody. Nobody, I don't think they had any malicious reason for doing that. So they flip a switch, make it all public. Well, if you were a gay teen in the closet with, say, bigoted parents, you live in the South, your friends list and your likes, that gives out your sexual orientation. Suddenly parents knew their sexual orientation. For some of them, that means getting kicked out of the house. And we know the suicide rates for homeless gay teenagers. And there was a massive disaster, and Facebook, oh my God, that's not what we meant, and turned it back. So you can now make your friends list and likes private again. But I think that's just a good example of what are people afraid of. For some people, it's actual bodily harm, and I think we should never lose sight of that when we're designing products.
I think there was a time, like 10 years ago, like sort of Gawker's prime era, when if you were caught on the web doing something stupid, or if you were stupid enough to post like an embarrassing photo and it became viral just based on the whims of some blogger, that was your fate. And like, you deserve that, that's on your permanent record, and that's just your life now. But I think that's changed. I think it's a lot kinder now. Again, there's many monsters on the web, but there's a sense that everyone has like a dirty picture somewhere that they don't want to get out, and there's a lot more empathy for people who might go through that. Yeah,
it seems like the conversation really changed after Jennifer Lawrence, or maybe at that. That was sort of a pivot where the previous, it was somebody would have their photos spread beyond what they intended, and it would be like, you shouldn't have taken those photos. And I feel like the response now is a much more mature and useful one, which is, oh my God, don't spread people's photos past what they intend.
Yeah, I was watching the high school classic American Pie over Thanksgiving, and it's crazy because there's a scene where a girl changes in a boy's bedroom and they tape her and like show it live over the internet. And there's like no like flicker of second guessing that this is a great idea. There's no guilt about it. This is just like, it's incredible, and we've completely changed since then.
Yeah, I mean, we wonder why people are so often, I say people, I mean boys, are so often sharing photos. Like if somebody sends them a photo and they share it, the culture hasn't done a whole lot to say that is the moment, that's the moral moment. Like the moral problem for most of the books in here about the internet is the girl taking the photo, not the guy sending it to his class. And it'd be nice if more of these books, the in the rare books room, more of these rare books took on sexting in a morally a better way that is like less victim blamey.
Yeah, well, backstage we were talking about the new book by Nancy Jo Sales, American Girls, and it's, in a long line of hysterical parents targeted books and like Dateline specials about how kids these days are sending sex, they're hypersexualized, they're being ruined by Instagram and Snapchat. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, you can already guess the cover of the book that is about, oh my God, the internet is sexualizing teen girls, right? It's two girls and they're wearing, it's like focused on their like midriffs and their chests, and they're wearing like the book is doing the thing. This is like a classic, if you teach Foucault's history of sexuality, just use this as an example. This is like the classic American response where you pretend to be outraged about sex, and really it's an obsession with. This is classic concern trolling. When we say concern trolling, it's sort of enacting the thing that you're concerned about, and it's very, I think, counterproductive.
Yeah, there's the whole book is full of anecdotes that are very. If you gossiped in high school, you're familiar with all of them. This one girl did this one sexy thing, and then everybody found out about it, and her life is ruined. And there's no evidence that that is caused by the internet, for one. And for another, yeah, it's pure, it's leering at these girls. But the most remarkable part of the book, I think, is late in it, where the author goes to Tucson and interviews a homeless crust punk girl. And she talks about how she has to wear big clothes because she's afraid of being raped, and she's afraid of like the men, and she like tries to pretend to be a boy. And the author kind of presents this idea that maybe this girl's better off because she doesn't have the pressure of social media, which is insane.
It's a really, really depressing part of internet discussions right now, is sort of I mean, of course, society is uncomfortable with young people having sexual desires, especially young women having sexual desires. So I guess it's not necessarily a surprise, but we're getting the card to go on to the next question. Also uncomfortable with young women's sexual desires, I guess. I feel like this. Can an algorithm be an asshole?
Okay, yeah.
Can a card be an asshole?
Yeah. I don't know. There's just like a big topic of discussion recently. I'm not an expert on it, but obviously there's a general idea that Silicon Valley is full of young men who are not afraid of being harassed on the internet. So they create these platforms that don't have any protections for young women or anyone who might be targeted by like, the majority. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think you're right. Your response is kind of the opposite of the question, which is to talk about the platform that made the algorithm rather than to place the agency on the algorithm or the responsibility on the algorithm. So yeah, somebody making an algorithm can be an asshole. Somebody can make an algorithm that creates an asshole character, which now, so you're referencing the Tay bot, the Microsoft made a teen girl bot, which was gamed by horrible people on the internet to say horrible things in support of Trump and Hitler. And which is interesting. If you wanted a game of bot to be as bad, they picked Hitler and Trump. And and so the responsibility here comes when you make a bot or make an algorithm that can be gamed to go around tweeting awful things. That is awful. That's the thing you shouldn't do. And a lot of these algorithms, they spin out of control. People make something. And they don't know what the algorithm is going to do. It's like Google. Google's had some just absolute disasters with you'll search something and the wrong thing comes up. They had one just recently compared black people and gorillas. And nobody at Google was like, oh, I've got a funny thing I'm going to program into here. This was a series of events that they didn't foresee. And if you put something out into the world that can do that, I feel like it's your responsibility.
Yeah, they're like architects of the infrastructure that like our brains are operating in. And just like a city planner, they have to anticipate the worst impulses and that there are criminals or people who are out to hurt people and have to protect against that.
Yeah. Cool. We're flying through these. 3 billion people were online in 2015. What predictions can we make about the next 4 billion gaining access to the internet?
I don't know. One thing that I've noticed while reporting on young people is that they grew up with the internet as a toy. Like, we use it, it's like something for work, it's a little uncomfortable, but for them it's just something, a means to an end. They compete, you know, starting from like age 13 or 14 to make the most viral video. Like, so like, it's their home. And another element is that they're highly verbal because they're like immersed in the written word at all times. They're like constantly communicating, right? There's the old saw of like, I write to know what I think, right? Well, they're like doing this constantly. And I think, you know, from what I've read, written by teenagers, they're a lot more sophisticated than I was at their age. So if that, you know, played out for a larger population, I think, you know, it's a net positive.
Right. Yeah, I think there is sort of the utopian vision that if we can just get internet to everybody, the world will become a better place. Do you?
Yeah, everyone will have empathy and we'll all work together and it will be great. Of course, the Tay AI incident from this week obviously shows that's not always true. Trump is in the news, right? We've talked a lot about him and the idea of the downscale, not college-educated white male who feels left out of the new economy and how he has like racial animus and that's why he likes Trump. But if you go on certain parts of the internet, there are very young, very educated, very smart and tech-savvy people who are white supremacists. Like, just because they have access to technology does not mean they become better people.
Yeah, I mean, it's the internet's so great. A lot of horrible things have happened in the age of the internet or the era of the internet, and I think there was a lot of utopian rhetoric around the Arab Spring, and it wasn't like those places plus internet equals democracy. That didn't happen in all those places. The internet seemed to be much better at mobilizing people and maybe tearing something down. The role of the internet in creating new structures. I don't hear any of that same utopian rhetoric about the internet in the Arab North Africa world. So, it might be maybe a more productive way of thinking about more people gaining access to the internet isn't through the will it be better or worse lens. Maybe it is sort of culturally. How will that change? What will change when the internet that we interact with is more globally diverse? I wonder if we were talking about sharing images as something that can cross language and cultural barriers. I wonder if we'll see a more expansion towards communication going visual as opposed to writing.
Well, yeah. I mean, when I was younger, like in the 90s, right, there's this sort of idea, like, with the TV show Friends, that if you didn't like your family, you could create your urban family. After college or high school, you come to the big city and you create an accepting group if, like, maybe you're a single woman or a gay man. But now people can find their own family on the internet when they're like 13. Like, when I researched Tumblr, these kids had friends all across the world. If they were up at 4 a.m. and having a bad day, they would talk to their friend in Australia about it. And so they like have an emotional support system that, like, the sad kid in Alabama in like 1965 just didn't have. So I don't know. I mean, I think that the weird, articulate, strange kids of the world are like certainly beneficiaries of like social media and the growth of internet culture.
Yeah. Weird kids unite. Is it? No, it's your turn.
Oh, okay. Is it safe to be a woman on the internet?
Like, I get this. We didn't plan this out, apparently. I'm gonna defer.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, I'm curious of your perspective from the outside, but so I have to have like a Twitter profile for my work, right? Like the market people want you to have like a personal brand where you're like fun and cool, but know about politics. And the thing that I've noticed is that, first of all, because I write about politics, my Twitter audience is like 65% male. And there are oftentimes these men who develop a really intense emotional relationship with me, whether they like me or hate me, that is like inexplicable. So if they get mad at me, for example, like I might never respond and they'll send me 10 tweets in a row going through all the stages of grief, like rage, denial. Suddenly they're like bargaining with me. Like I'm reading these tweets, they're so bizarre. It's like, look, if you just do this one thing, I'll stop harassing you. Just please, come on. And it's like, it's so strange. So like one of the ways like social media has changed how we interact is that it feels like we have a real relationship with someone because we can see their face, even though we've never talked to them. But yeah, so being a woman on the internet, it's often a bummer. But it's not horrible. It's not as bad as some people say, but it's really weird.
Yeah. Actually, no. Hashtag. Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that I think we're starting to hear this conversation more. The big tech companies and social networks, they're starting to have these conversations. These conversations now. And Twitter kind of made a push for it seemed like a bit, and then the guy left that was making the push, and I haven't heard anything since. Was that Dick Costello? But yeah, there's just very few tools out there to protect against being harassed. And so the question is it safe to be a woman? Not only are women treated differently, this gets back again to social vulnerability. This is when you're a sociologist talking about the internet, you talk about social vulnerability. That's the sociological perspective. I don't think that perspective is in much of the tech culture, given its demographics, people that look like me. And that's I think that that's just a real problem. Is that you see this all the time. Somebody will make a new network, and it doesn't even have a block feature or a mute button. Yeah. Well, it's like, well, okay, well, who? Of course, men made that network, right?
Yeah.
That would not be a mistake. If you had a diverse team, that would not be a mistake you would make. I think Elle is the one I remember, and it was like they launched out a block button. It's like, oh, who made this? Oh, it was 7 guys. Like, that's not surprising. It's not to say those are like bad dudes or like to raise my hand and say like I'm a better. No, it's just from a perspective of making a product that isn't awful for your users, a terrible, terrible idea. So I think we need to build in these, obviously build in a lot of functionality on being able to block, being able to report, and the flagging systems are just complicated to no end because it takes a lot of people. If you have 1 billion users, actually dealing with how people are flagging and blocking, because of really bad people use those flagging and blocking systems too to troll, right? To make those systems unusable so that they can then game them for harassing people.
Yeah, I think police departments also don't understand tech very well. So a close friend lives in a small town, and there's a woman there who is mentally ill that everyone in the neighborhood calls Crazy Becky. It's definitely a failure of our healthcare system. But what happens with Crazy Becky is she'll go on a fit. Well, she'll make harassing phone calls, like hundreds and hundreds of phone calls a day to someone, and then she gets sent off to jail. But like, if I get hundreds and hundreds of tweets from someone, like, so what? Like, no one's gonna do anything. Like, it's absolutely taboo to send harassing phone calls to someone, but like, someone could send me hundreds of, like, racist emails a day, and, like, no one will do anything.
You call in a bomb threat, this place gets emptied. You tweet a bomb threat, they're like, it's just Twitter.
Right.
And I think that's been a real issue. If you go to some authority and say, look what's happening on the internet, they go, oh, that's just the internet, as if the internet isn't real. And that's an understanding we need to lose, that the internet is somehow not real. That said, the more depressing and I think more correct answer to this is, the idea of, oh, we just need to get the cops more involved is probably not going to be the answer that we want. And the idea of, oh, we just need these networks to police everybody more, well, I mean, these aren't people that are elected or appointed in any way, right? These are business people. Do we want them organizing and policing how we interact? You know, what counts, what you can say and what you can't say. Like Mark Zuckerberg gets to decide whether a breastfeeding photo is allowed or not. Like we don't. You know, we're kind of in the situation where we've handed way too much power to way too few people, and we're in this mess. And it's like, okay, well. Like, yeah, do we need to be calling the cops all the time and bringing cops involved? Do we want these business people to be making these decisions? So like the depressing answer is like, oh no, we need to fix culture, fix the culture that makes women more vulnerable, and that's not the easy solution anybody wants when they talk about these issues. They want the tech. Like, oh, we just need the right code and sexism will go away.
Right, yeah.
Sexism isn't an engineering problem, it's a social problem. Right?
Yeah, writing about politics has been, it's like what you get back is a really interesting x-ray of the culture, right? So I'm a woman, so what they email me is always blowjob jokes. Like, there's never any variety. It's always the same. It's always Monica Lewinsky. My friend is Filipino. His last name sounds like it could be Muslim or it could be Hispanic. And people will write to him and be like, I can tell by your name you're a minority. Like, that's like as simple as it gets. And then my friend who's a white male just gets that he's gay. It's like identity politics is like so embedded in like how like the angry white males react to you. It's bizarre.
Yeah. Well, we might think of ways that people are also more safe on the internet. You know, we talk about the sexualizing of teen girls and people worrying about, are they taking selfies or this or that? And, you know, what about the idea of screen-mediated sexuality as being particularly safe from, you know, physical harm, from partner abuse, or health issues, STIs, or, I mean, you think there's anything to that? Is there some ways that the screen actually mitigates safety? Makes one more safe?
Yeah, that's interesting. Like, when you're young, you can experiment by sending selfies instead of, you know, fumbling around and getting pregnant, which is a plus. Well, what has, like, Snapchat done to try to deal with these issues?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something that has to be a part of the conversation with each thing you're making. So you think of, okay, what is not just this ideal user, the user you have in your head, but try to think of people who are particularly socially vulnerable. You need to, at the very beginning, build in tools that allow you to block a report or to have functions where you say, no, like, I don't want random photos, and then something to do if you do get a photo that you didn't consent to receiving. And also the network is sort of built on the idea of the ephemerality as allowing a little bit more looseness or playfulness without so much heavy-handed repercussions. I mean, certainly people can screenshot and take photos and this and that. I don't think it's certainly not a secrecy network, but it is a little bit, I think, a little bit more playful and a little bit more loose instead of, we do have a culture, unfortunately, that, like you said, that, having a little digital dirt or skeletons in your Facebook history can be very debasing. And I think more ephemerality, or at least questioning this assumption that everything we do should be permanent, will help in that. I mean, I just would think of one example. There was I think it was like 2006 election cycle, and there was two people running for the House of Representatives. There was the woman Crystal Ball.
Yeah.
And she had in her MySpace photos like some college party from Halloween, and they weren't even that racy. I think she was wearing a costume that had like a dildo for its nose.
Yeah.
And she became the most Googled person in the entire world. Her identity, her campaign, everything became about these photos. Everyone was looking at these photos. In the same election cycle, there was a guy from one of the first or second season of The Real World. And he was on The Real World just like drunk and naked all the time. And everybody's like, oh, like this is how's he gonna run for office? And he won just fine. Everyone was like, boys will be boys. You have wild times when you're young. So the idea of having this little bit of digital dirt in your past, that issue isn't evenly distributed, right? Like
Right.
that hurts in this situation is a clear example of how that hurts a woman more than it will hurt a man. Those scandalous photos came to define her in a way they couldn't for him. So really questioning this assumption of permanence is one half of it, and I think the other half is culturally we need to stop being so terrified of somebody having some photos in their past. We need to erode that stigma because that stigma is so unevenly applied.
That's really interesting. You know, in that same election, Mark Foley, the Florida congressman, do you remember him?
I remember that.
He got busted for sending like sexy G chats to young pages. That was like an incredible scandal because he was done in by this because it was the text. And you could go through it and read how he's trying to talk these kids into like giving them pictures or describing their sexual activities. It is fascinating that like pictures might be fading, but I don't think like if my G chats got leaked, I would be like toast. Like I don't think that has changed.
Yeah, there's kind of this idea. I remember you brought up Gawker. They wrote a thing that was like, public is public. Like if you put something out there, then it's free use. Everybody can do anything they want, which, you know, kind of ironically bit them recently. They were like, what, our Slack conversations are being posted in public? Yeah. And it was like, oh my God. We do need to respect the context in which something is shared. As opposed to this kind of, oh, whatever gets posted, this is like, if it's out there, and everybody should be able to use it. So that really should be the focus right now when it comes to privacy and the internet, is respecting the context through which something was shared. You know, when somebody sends you something, do they intend for other people to see it? If not, you don't share it. That needs to be something that we collectively hammer home, teach people. Right, like when it's like schools have how the kids should use social media classes, and it's all just basically girls stop taking photos of yourself, and those classes need to be guys stop sharing photos.
Right.
So I think that's part of our. Again, all these things that we're talking about aren't engineering solutions. These aren't like let's fix the coding.
Yeah, they're
these are
cultural.
like the way that we all like. This is our issue collectively, in addition to the companies who also have a responsibility.
Right. Social media just allows the collection of evidence of these behaviors.
Yeah.
Okay, I will read the question. Okay, who does anonymity benefit the most? Who loses?
Yeah, there's a lot of ways that anonymity can be used for good and for bad, right? And so for good, I think of on Yik Yak. I'll often follow what is posted on Yik Yak, and it's actually similar to an app you were showing me right before we walked out here called Vent, and where a lot of popular Yik Yaks popular yaks are sort of declaring some sort of an issue, like maybe something that you're not allowed to speak in public or like depression. Like I'm going to talk about my depression here. Well, you're told not to do that you're not supposed to talk about that. But when you give somebody anonymity, it becomes okay. And other people who can relate to this thing that you're talking about say, oh yeah, like I relate to that. And you might give that a positive vote, and that acts as some sort of social support for the person posting it. Or think about, protesters, people who are living under repressive regimes. Where anonymity can be, as essential for being able to communicate and organize. But then, of course, anonymity is also often used for horrible, terrible reasons, as 4chan and 8chan and Reddit and Anonymous oftentimes exhibit that. Anonymity can be used as an excuse of doing anything bad without repercussion. So it's good and bad, right?
Yeah. I think when we're promoting our personal brand, right, that's when we only show performance of happiness, right? With like, I'm amazing. I'm like doing so wonderful. Like, you need to be keeping up with me. I'm not keeping up with you. And then when we have anonymity, like I'll try to show you guys like the Vent app. It's like amazing. It's kind of this like cutely dystopian thing where you can you pick your emotion. You pick from like, are you feeling in the range of happy? Are you like kind of sad? Are you feeling scared, right? Okay, so it's like color-coded like this. I don't know if you
Everybody
guys
can
see.
read that, right? Yeah.
Right, and it'll say like, it's like red, it's like angry or annoyed or bitter or disgusted, right? And then you select that. And then you like say something and people can respond saying like same or like here for you or like I care about you. And it's like a validation of your feelings without costing you anything like in your social network, your like real life social network for like admitting your vulnerability.
Yeah. I think it was really interesting that so many of our anonymous platforms are dominated by white guys.
Yeah.
Why is that?
I don't know, because so I was reading 4chan the other day, and like I like in some ways, I mean, many of them are monsters, but I identify with them a little bit because like my whole life I've loved to troll. I mean, I wouldn't have had that word in high school, but like I loved provoking people and like pissing people off and getting on their nerves, and like I completely understand like the instinct to want to enrage like a million people at once, right? Like, I mean, what kind of thrill would that be? Like, especially if you are unhappy with your place in society. Like, maybe you're not good at sports, right? You're a boy, you feel a little bit like impotent and frustrated, and you can go online and like make all these adults just like cry. Like, I understand the instinct for that. And I also don't know how you like engineer that away. And if you did try to get rid of it, it would be smothering. I have trolled anonymously. I've never, my handle was Biff. I've always loved to troll as like a swaggering macho guy because it's like so funny to me. I like love doing the satire of it. And we would just go on this conservative blog and try to out-conservative, be like, no, you don't love America like we do. And I think if you got rid of that, it would really suck. It would be no fun.
You should have run for president.
I know. Right, yeah, I was ahead of my time.
Right. What if that whole thing is a joke? What if this is all just a joke?
I've really thought about
like,
that.
even people are voting, going, "Aha, what a funny joke!" All right. And then we have to deal with the consequences. All right. Last question: search engines and increasingly social media platforms prioritize what's popular, not what's necessarily most true or important to know. Does veracity stand a chance anymore?
Well, I have personal experience with that. So, yeah, it really sucks to Google me, so don't do it. But like I was like
It's guaranteed that everybody's gonna Google you.
well, I know, but so like in 2007, I was like caught up in this like media scandal, and I had a very minor role in it, but because I'm a female and I was like 24, it became this huge thing, and so like my first page of results is just like all this crazy stuff, and there's like I had a long lost uncle who emailed me like asking for the birthday of my child. Well, I don't have any kids, but like this blogger like wrote this long thing like theorizing that I was pregnant, and like now that's on the internet forever. And there's no way to get rid of it. The best I can hope for is link rot. I was talking to another guy who is a libertarian cartoonist. And he made these cartoons. It's a fascinating case. He made these cartoons that, if you squint, they're like bordering on the edge of like anti-Semitic banking conspiracies, right? Like he imagines like the Federal Reserve, like the triangle from the dollar bill, right? And it says global banking elite, and they're like trampling on the people. So 4chan just put an anti-Semitic face on the pyramid, right? They make the subtext text. But they've ruined this man's life by making him look like he's a true anti-Semite. And the more he tried to get them to stop, the more they did it. So like if you Google him, what comes up is like pictures of him in a Nazi uniform, which are completely fake. Like pictures of him like with swastikas, like the most horrible, vile, racist images. And there's nothing he can do about it. He went to Reputation.com, like we've all heard the ads for that. They wanted to charge him $8,000 just to get the one Hitler picture taken down. So like, what is someone supposed to do? Like, he's given up. Like, there's no way to fix it.
No. Yeah, so you can sort of troll people through their search results, as
Yeah.
Dan Savage most famously did with
Well,
Rick
of course,
Santorum.
yeah. I mean, I guess you could say that's used for sort of good. I mean,
Sometimes you can troll up.
yeah,
rather
you
than
can troll
down.
up. It's better to troll up than to troll down. I say never troll someone like that unless they already have a Wikipedia page. Otherwise, it's not fair.
Yeah, I think, and so I think the question is also sort of pointing at this, the filter bubble idea that what we kind of end up seeing what we want to see because, my Google search results aren't your Google search results.
Right.
And, they've probably intuited my politics. And so I'm going to see a different set of search results than somebody with different politics, as Google's guessing. They can make a pretty good guess. Your search history and your web history and your social networks, they give out your political orientation, sexual orientation. They can get it pretty close. And so I'm going to likely see stuff that I already agree with. When I go to Facebook, the Facebook's algorithm is also going to give me things I also agree with. So I think there is some worry that maybe that is part of why we have a political conversation right now where it's just two groups of people who don't even see the other group as even possible to have a conversation with. They were wondering if, is it even possible to turn a Trump voter? Or is it just dug in? We're like, oh yeah, you're all just racist idiots. And they are just like, oh no, you're just brainwashed by, Washington DC and you politicians, idiot. And they're just two is not ever gonna talk.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's a fad on Tumblr for fake conspiracy theories and fake fact books, and it'll have a picture of an adorable otter, and it'll say not many people know this, but Abraham Lincoln kept 100 otters in the White House, and that'll get reblogged like crazy, and people still believe it. But I talked to people at Tumblr, and they told me that these kids have grown up writing papers and Googling things and finding a Wikipedia page and the sourcing and it looks promising and then it's a scam, or the one weird trick, which of course doesn't work and is total quackery. They've grown up knowing that truth is kind of an illusion. You're never going to get the cold hard facts. Everything can be faked. You can even Photoshop something. The kid who made this blog Animal Fact Book was the victim of a hate campaign in which people photoshopped him saying, requesting nudes from girls. And how do you disprove that? Because you can't un-Photoshop something. So I think the younger generation has grown up knowing that everything on the internet is maybe a lie.
What about what's on the internet, what you search for, what you see on Twitter or Facebook being organized by popularity? So Facebook through an algorithm, or through Twitter through retweets, or search engine ranking is, Google's partly sorted by clicks.
Yeah.
Is that, as popularity versus maybe what the editor thinks was most important? Is that, the front page in New York Times, that was chosen by an editor, not everybody in the subway station upvoting and downvoting, stories, right?
Yeah, it's interesting. And if you build your business model off their algorithm with one tweak, you're destroyed. But I've talked to a lot of kids who feel there had been this period of opening for wild social media creativity, 2010 to 2014. But now it's very difficult to become known for your jokes or whatever if you don't already know a famous person. Someone who's already reached the top has to pull you up there. There's just no getting there on your own.
Yeah, it does feel like there's the moment has shifted towards something, some kind of stasis, or we mix things up, and the power of people who were doing good before social media were doing good on social media, and there was a moment of mixing things up at the edges, but we're back towards maybe more of a consumer internet, where people I think are maybe a little bit more like television and less everyone's gonna have a blog.
That was the phase, though.
Yeah,
that was the phase. Everyone had a blog, and then a few of the bloggers got hired by the Times and the Post, and then blogs died.
Yeah, or the idea of Twitter, everybody can be a public personality, and it turns out with all the shit that you get by speaking in public, 10-15% of people want to be a public personality or are able to be, and people, and Twitter's trying to deal with oh no, we only have 15% of the entire country which should be, oh my, that should be great, but it's been evaluated and invested as if it's going to be something like Facebook. And so it does seem like that moment where like we're all going to speak in public and the news is going to be written by all of us. And that moment seems to have...
A lot of the things that appear to be organically viral online are actually...
Jimmy Kimmel.
Well, yes, lies. Again, the lies. But no, there's like a ring. There are rings of these like ultra powerful kids, like seriously kids in high school who are like, hey, let's make this thing go viral. Like I haven't researched the damn
Is this
Daniel
one of your
Shoes
fake
thing.
conspiracy? There's rings of powerful kids.
Yes, they have secret Facebook groups. Oh my, no, it's crazy. They are highly, highly organized. They have secret Facebook groups where they collude to like trade clicks and promote each other. And they'll be like, I talked to this one who like had a post that they just decided would go viral, and then they're like going crazy, like look at it, it's got 1 million notes now. Like it's just a game, but it's not based on, it's not a meritocracy.
Yeah, and that game is similar to what the publishing industry is doing, and that we're, I think, kind of dealing with is, yeah, so Facebook says we're going to order our algorithm based on clicks.
Yeah.
So everybody doesn't spend their time making the best content. They make content that'll get the most clicks. Like that's the classic thing. When you measure something, the measurement becomes not just a measure or the means, it becomes the ends.
Yeah.
And so you have something like, let's say, Upworthy. Sorry if ever somebody likes Upworthy, it's kind of, but Upworthy was created to get the most number of likes, but oftentimes you click on it and you felt disappointed because it didn't live up to the thing that you clicked on, because it was engineered to get the click. Once you're there, well, the content was coincidental to its circulation. It just needed the click. It needed the share. What was actually on the page didn't even matter. And so they basically, if clicks are the currency, then Upworthy was just printing counterfeit currency, right? And so just like, well, if you can print counterfeit currency and get away with it, well, then your currency is now worthless. Right, so you need some organization to stop people from counterfeiting, or else the currency is worthless. So Facebook basically just turned off Upworthy. They just changed their algorithm, and Upworthy went from being this company that was going to take over the world, the future of publishing, to now who talks about Upworthy? Just because Facebook they're in this game, they're playing whack-a-mole. Everyone is trying to game Facebook to get as many clicks as possible, and Facebook knows that it's being gamed, and they're trying to turn it off. And I just wonder if clicks are just not is that a currency long for this world?
I don't think so, because the kids I talk to, and these kids who are nobodies, and they're like not even cute, like they don't post pictures of their faces, like they're not like sexy, right? They did it all with content. It's all one-liners, right? The way they were adamant that you cannot sacrifice the integrity of your content to promote your personal brand, like, which is really completely backwards from like what's drilled in my head every day at a magazine. Like they really believe that over time, that if you sacrifice your content, then you're going to lose your audience.
And that's consistent with Reddit and 4chan and 8chan, where if you look like you're trying to gain any celebrity, and of course those are anonymous networks too, it's sort of anti-celebrity. That's kind of built into maybe in this moment of self-branding where everybody's supposed to be self-branded and go for likes, that there's naturally going to be kind of a kickback to that. There's also a culture that sort of...
a backlash.
Yeah, disrespects this status chasing,
authenticity.
Yeah, let's all be authentic again.
Yeah, the new authenticity.
For the first time. Cool. Should we do some
let's do some audience Q&A. Anybody has a question, just raise your hands in the back. We've got 2 microphones moving around.